I fear to tell y'all, we have been lied about every literal thing that we thought we knew. Really quick about the video you're watching right now. I recorded this yesterday and I was deeply troubled, grieved, and depressed when I found the information I'm about to show you. And this is just some of the information. There is so much more, but I want to let you know it does get better. I'm not ready to talk about the information that I've come into right now, but I do want to show you one thing. If you go on your Google and search when the sun went out for 18 months, you'll find a lot of stuff. They say in 534 AD that the sun went out for 18 months. It's very well documented by historians. What's even more worrisome is what they were saying in reference to the sun going out. You can find many references to this where people reverted to cannibalism, where large portions of humanity passed. Just terrible things came upon the earth. Now, there's a very renowned and revered historian who is exalted to high places who wrote a manuscript called The History of Wars, allegedly in this 500 to 600 AD range. Let me show you what it says in reference to the sun going out for 18 months. And it came about during the year that a most dread portent took place. For the sun gave forth its light without brightness, like the moon, during the whole year, and it seemed exceedingly like the sun in an eclipse, for the beams it shed were not clear, nor such as it was accustomed to be shed. It was not normal, it was not giving light. But this right here is the worrisome part. And men were free neither from war, nor pestilence, nor any other thing leading to death. Meaning there was massive war, massive pestilence, and massive everything leading to death. And it was this time when Justinian was in the 10th year of his reign. And then he continues to talk about Christians and their festivals, the way that they would be performed in the 1st century. And it wasn't just him experiencing this, it was the entire known world. Guys, I'm afraid to say that things are not as they appear to be. We all know the Tartarian Empire was very odd, out of place, no bathrooms, no kitchens, architecture we could not build today, the Cabbage Patch Kids in the 1800s seemingly, as well as sufficient documentation from Jewish historians in the 1st century that detail things that would totally wreck your world. And I mean wreck your world. I myself have to do much more digging before I fundamentally tell you yay or nay about this possibility that my mind is alluding to. But I can tell you, my mind has been completely obliterated since last night. Not because Tartaria, not because the sun went dark, but because the manner and the astronomical amount that we have been lied to. We don't even know who we are. I'm still searching for the truth. But I'll tell you, if you're closed off to the truth, you won't find it. But if you accept all information that is true, that turns out to be true, then you might find it. And then we get into the 1700s and the 1800s. You know, the biggest thing that I've noticed is we see first empty, deserted towns, cities, grand buildings. Then we see suits start showing up. Shortly after the suits show up, we see a bunch of children in dirty muck. Just they've been working, so the children are the workers and the adults are not working. So what's going on with this, Brian?
Yeah, this is a really interesting subject. The children that spontaneously just happen to come out of nowhere. Okay, guys, this is a very interesting thing. This is where you get the story of Cabbage Patch Kids. If you guys don't know, but Cabbage Patch Kids, there was this story that these children just started showing up out of nowhere. Children started coming out of the forest, and they believed they were growing out of cabbage fields and fields where all these kids just showed up, and then they put them on trains and had to do something with them. And so there's this time called the orphan trains, and you can look up orphan trains where they ship these children all over the world and try to like give them to families and people to try to, you know, repopulate the earth. Very interesting subject, because all these kids showed up out of nowhere. And there was, during the World's Fairs, they had baby incubation fairs. Guys, look up the baby incubators as well. You can put a picture of some of that. This happened all over the place. Like, there was baby incubators at a lot of fairs. Started this way. You go to the fair and you'd pick up a child.
Yes, and they did not, you know, it just blows my mind, man, because we had these children being trained around, then we had these children, and the incubator babies. We had children that were being sold on postcards. We'll put some of that up right now, and these aren't fake postcards. Look them up yourself. These are literal postcards for people selling children. And we're like, where are the children coming from? Well, the insane asylums. What were they for? The religious fanatics. Who are the religious fanatics? Probably some people who lived in a certain time period where amazing things were going on and they remembered things from it.
It is alarmingly suspicious.
Alright, I'm back to break down the Weeknd's concert. It goes way freaking deeper than you could even imagine. Most people won't even comprehend, because it literally goes into Eastern mysticism and ancient gods and a whole bunch of crazy freaking stuff. And it even goes into the birth of the Weeknd and who he really is. Let's start at the basis of this whole thing. This is a religious concert. It takes place in a very religious time. You may know it by Tartaria, when amazing buildings were all around the world and churches were carved into actual mountains. He's dressed as a freaking priest. But what kind of priest? Look at the side of his robe on his head. He has a sun on there. Helios, Apollyon, Abaddon, Lucifer, the Lightbringer. That's what this is about. We'll get right back to Helios in a minute, because there's some entity trapped behind this wall. I wonder who it could be. And this is an ancient church, literally mimicking the churches that were built in stone and in the mountains that the locals said was no mystery, that it was built by literal angels. Literally the ancient Ethiopian Orthodox churches that were literally built when angels were among men. So when was that exactly? Yeah, it seems like someone's lying about history. So you figure if angels were building literal freaking churches in the mountains, it'd be in our history books. But it's not. So I told you guys last night my reel, there was just not enough time in a minute and 30 seconds to really go over everything with the Weeknd, his concert. But let's start here. It's never been hard to find demonic things with the Weeknd. Look at all these red robes standing in front of a full moon. But what happened to this moon? It turned into a blood moon. Look into the significance of a blood moon in these kind of people. So why am I bringing you back to this concert and not the most recent one? They're connected. Look right here at these buildings in the background. It's Tartaria, again. And more symbolism with the blood moon and then some light bearer. It's getting pretty interesting now, right? So about 10 years ago, these very, very odd pictures popped up on the internet of the Weeknd as a baby. It took me almost an hour to even find one of them for you, but I found them. Check it out. Originally, this was a set of pictures with the Weeknd as a baby, his mom, both wearing some kind of robes, and the others you can see more clearly, but this around his neck is actually Baphomet. As a baby, you guys? Like I said, this stuff goes way back, and the family trees of the demonic start young. Now back to this concert. So we have the Weeknd being a priest of the sun, or Helios, on this medieval building built by angels themselves, and there's this huge entity trying to break out. Who is he and what's he breaking out of? I'm seeing people wake up, but their ideals are still twisted. People are trying to say that the Statue of Liberty is chained up. No, it is unchained. The chain, the shackle is broken. And again, the Statue of Liberty is literally Satan himself. Apollo, Abaddon, Helios, the list goes on forever. So Satan is trying to break out of his confinement with one of his highest priests. Just like here in the Chicago concert with the blood moon bringing upon the Lightbringer. Y'all, the in God we trust on your money is not the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Clearly so with this depiction right here. But even further, the in God we trust wasn't even on the very, very old money from the United States, showing that something big had transpired between the decades. And to now there's a certain God that they trust in. Why, it couldn't be, right? Now speaking of the money, so the stage is set for the concert at a medieval or Tartarian type time when supernatural things were happening on the earth, the same exact time as the Byzantine Empire. Here's a coin from the Byzantine Empire having Jesus' face on it. It gets way crazier. These are called anonymous follies because they do not display the name or portrait of any emperor, instead emphasizing the authority of Christ over the empire. Did y'all just freaking hear me? And the Byzantine Empire is known for its paintings always showing angels among humans. I'm telling you guys, you're just seeing the very tip of the iceberg. And hundreds of years ago, coins were known to have the name of the Father on them, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, at a time when angels were among men helping them build churches. Again, the Ethiopian Orthodox said it was no mystery, they know exactly how they got there. I have tons of images of these coins and people try to debunk them, but there's way too many to debunk, especially with all these circumstantial evidence. So tell me why nothing is adding up, like none of these cents are equaling dollars. What's going on? Well, my friends, that's all part of the game. Remember, Satan is the master of deceit. He is the very first liar since the very beginning and the father of all lies. So you wonder what the Weeknd's been doing all of this time, huh? He and they and most of unrealized humanity are all celebrating and worshiping the empire of their father, the devil. Part 2 later. Trust me, you do not want to miss it. And we're still just brushing the very top of this very elaborate thing called life in the 21st century. Much more to come. Y'all are not ready for this rabbit hole, I'm telling you right now. For the first time ever, I think I learned too much. We all know history is a lie, but to what extent of a lie is it, and who really is this man? What if I told you that almost all of our genealogies for popes are complete lies? Not only that, I can prove to you with historical books that they added like 1,000 years to the calendar. But man, it's so much deeper. Let's start easy. We all know the Pope just came out and said that any way is the way to God. But Jesus said no man can come to the Father but by me. Alright, I'm not going to keep it too long, but I'm not sure how deep you can go, so we're going to take it easy at first. So Google will tell us the second Pope is Pope Linus. But Google's lying. The Geneva Bible written in 1560 says right here that Sylvester is the second Pope. But it says much more than that. So we're in Revelation chapter 20 of the Geneva Bible. Right here we're talking about how Satan will be bound up for 1,000 years and then he'll be loosed for a little season. Don't get mad at me, I'm just reading it to you. And he took the dragon and old serpent, which is the devil and Satan, and bound him 1,000 years, and we see a sea right beside it. And cast him into the bottomless pit, and sealed him. They cannot deceive people till 1,000 years were over. So first let's jump to see in the footnotes. Now first off, I read this over and over and over again to make sure I had a good understanding of what it was saying. So we're talking about the 1,000 years that Satan was loose. It says, that is from Christ in his reign until Pope Sylvester II. It literally says that Satan will be loosed from the 1,000 years at the coming of the second Pope, Sylvester, however you pronounce his name. Sylvester Mazzolani, 1456. It's funny, it does not call him a pope, it calls him a theologian. Sylvester Mazzolani and Sylvester Pyrrhus is the same person. Early controversies over indulgence as the papal court theologian. Nah, he was the second pope. Don't believe me? Here you go. The Beehive of Roman Catholicism Church, a book from the 1500s. Sylvester a Pope, Sylvester the Pope. Sylvester Pyrrhus in his golden role. But what does this book say about him? It says Sylvester Pyrrhus is blasphemous or has blasphemous opinions. He had controversy of Martin Luther. Martin Luther thought that salvation was a gift of grace alone that we could not earn, and Sylvester wanted the dominance of the Roman Catholic Church. Back to the Geneva Bible, what does it say about D when Satan is released? It says that Satan will have more authority and power the second time. See, y'all are about to catch an attitude with me. I'm just reading to you what actual historical books say. Pope Linus was the second pope. Sylvester is the second pope, just like it said in the Geneva Bible from the 1500s. Your dates are a lie. Your popes are a lie. Everything you know is a lie. But just how much of a lie is it? This is Revelation 13 of the Geneva Bible, talking about the beast coming out of the water. In the footnotes it says, here's a depiction of the Roman Empire. Now let's expand on the first century, the Roman Empire, and the Antichrist from Revelation 13. It said the Pope's kingdom is what leads people to perdition. Every kind of craft, rebellion, and tyranny. Finally, so Boniface the Eighth, which was ordained first, one day wore the apparel as a pope, the next day wore apparel as an emperor. And the two horns were the bishops. I'm not going to sit here and act like I have it all figured out, but one thing is certain, we've been drastically lied to, and this dude right here works for the devil if he's not the devil himself. And shortly after Sylvester came on the scene, we had the military arm of the Pope and the Black Pope. I know there's going to be tons of questions, prove this, prove I'm not proving nothing to you, I'm just telling you guys what the things say. And when you say, when did the stars fall? Well, Google says 1700. When did the sun go out? Well, Google says 500 AD. When did all the lands move? Well, Google showed from the 1600s to now that everything has moved out of its place. When did the Mount of Olives split? If you actually pay attention to the geography, it actually is split. The Bible says it'll be like a giant valley going half a mile to Azel. Look, I'm not telling you anything concrete. I'm just saying be aware. Be aware of where you are, where you might be, what may happen. Be aware and cling to Jesus. So this is insane. So allegedly Satan and God had a conversation that Satan would have control of the church? And so much more, multiple people having visions of the past, saying about the same thing, and these same things manifesting physically in our world today? And right after we go into these accounts, I'll show you how it most seemingly seems to be true. Believe it or not, you don't have to be a saint for God to speak to you or show you something. So our story starts right here when Pope Leo XIII supposedly had a vision where he saw God and Satan talking. Which reminds me so much of the story of Job, but Satan said, I can destroy your church. And God said, then go ahead and do so. He said, I need more time and more power. And God said, how much more time? Satan says 75 to 100 years and a greater power over those who will give themselves over to my service. To which God supposedly said, you have the time and you have the power, do with them what you will. Trying to turn God's church away from him. Now 75 to 100 years, since around 1900, that would generally put you around the year 2000. When did everything in our world get anti-God, but especially in America? Yes, very recently. So is this just a guy with the story, or does he have eyewitnesses? He does have eyewitnesses. Domenico Pecanino says, I do not remember the exact year, but one morning, the great Pope Leo had celebrated Mass as usual and was attending a Mass at Thanksgiving. Suddenly, we saw him raise his hands and stare at something above his head. He was staring motionless without batting an eye. Expression was one of horror and awe. The color and look on his face changed rapidly. Something unusual and grave had happened to him. And around the same time, we have a very, very similar story of someone else. This is Anne Catherine Emmerich, who is said to have visions, and she was very well trusted in this Roman Catholic Church. And her most notable vision is called the Unchaining of Satan. I'm going to show you why that's so big in a minute. So pause to read, but basically she had a vision where she saw hell, and there were demons that were chained down. Lucifer being cast into this, and after the first strongest security were chained, where thick clouds, sulphurous black smoke arose from fearful depths and enveloped a frightful form in the dismal folds, thus effectually concealing him from every beholder, and God himself had decreed this. Before going further, let God be true and every man a liar. And I was likewise told, if I remember rightly, that he will be unchained for a time 50 or 60 until the year of Christ 2000. So she didn't remember correctly, but the dates and the accounts will go back and forth a few decades, but they both end up at the year right about 2000. And before Satan was to come out all the way and attack, his legions of demons would come forth before he did, but around the same time that he did. And that he would inevitably be unchained for about 50 to 100 years, give or take. And again, putting us at the Pope's year 2000 and her year 2000. So what happened about 60, 70 years ago? Well, of course, we had the World War start. And then since that time frame, the world has been becoming more satanic every single day that goes on. So theoretically, it makes sense, but get this. Since we have been alive, the Statue of Liberty or the Statue of Lucifer or Apollyon or Abaddon has been unchained, with the shackle broken off of his foot. So it appears to me as if there's some merit to these visions. What do you think? Let me know below. If you ask me, it seems as if the whole world is under allegiance to Satan as we speak. And you don't even have to look far to reach that consensus. This is the greatest secret ever kept. This reality we live in is not what you think it is. A quick disclaimer, this video will be hard for a lot of people to stomach, but that's part of the process. By all means, if it gets too hard, then scroll, you can always come back to it. First, we'll ask, why are all these buildings around us covered by stories of dirt? All over the world, we see these buildings that are covered by layers of dirt. And in about the same time as these buried structures, we have these massive structures that are built all over the earth, and they have no bathrooms and no kitchens. A lot of times built out of one solid material like marble, something it'd be hard to even pull off today, and I know you're asking yourself, how'd they do this? Well, the ancient Ethiopian Orthodox Church has the secret, and for some reason it's not mainstream. Buildings like I just showed you built into solid rock in the ground, they said were helped build by angels themselves. Angels are believed to help assist in the construction of the rock-out churches in Libya. I know I pronounced that wrong, it's okay. So maybe these buildings are starting to make sense if literal angels help them do this. So on the same timeline with actual physical evidence, how did that same period of that amazing architecture end? Not too long after, it ended with huge, insane asylums everywhere. Some people say the ones who went there because they remembered something amazing. A period in time that nobody seems to remember. And also around that same time period, we had the infant incubators pop up. And at the same exact time of the Cabbage Patch Kids. So where did all these kids come from? With all of these insane postcards? It really makes one wonder, huh? And buildings aren't the only thing. These railroad tracks were here before we got here. Seems like people were traveling at this point in time all the way from Argentina to the North Pole. I wonder what could be up there. Come back to this. So what happened before this whole period of these grand structures? Well, the sun went dark for 18 months. They said much, but in the book History of Wars by Procopius, if I pronounce his name right, a Greek scholar, and he wrote, and it came about during this year, a most dread portent took place, for the sun gave forth its light without brightness, like the moon during this whole year, and it seemed exceedingly like the sun was in an eclipse. Watch this. And from the time when this thing happened, men were free neither from war, nor pestilence, nor any other thing that leadeth to death. So the whole world was in darkness by the sun, and while that was happening, there is pestilence all over the world. I wonder what that could mean. I know it's very hard to digest all this, but keep going. So in 536 AD that happened? We're gonna pop into Geneva 1570 for hints, but first let's go over here. 536? What's this? Why is this building and this building the same exact building, a picture of the same exact thing, and the dates are up by 1,000 years? Maybe the dating system is wrong. 1732 or J732. 1672 or J672. 1783 or I783. What's an I or a J4? Here's a coin. Jehovah with the I? The tetragrammaton right here. 1568 or I568. Jehovah again, just like Jehovah, like YHVH. And again, what is this right here? The official royal motto of King Charles IX of Sweden? And on the statue in Latin it reads, Jehovah Saladium Meum? He was a ruler who highlighted God's name in Hebrew or Latin characters on coins and medals. So just like the coins I was showing you, the Jehovah or Jehovah is synonymous with the J? So let's dig a little bit deeper, because the Byzantine Empire, that empire that lasted 1,000 years, had pictures of Jesus on coins. These coins are referred to as anonymous follies because they do not display the name of the portrait of any reigning emperor, emphasizing instead the religious authority of Christ over the empire. These coins were minted in the millions? Is it just me, or is someone not telling us the truth about history? So an I and a J are synonymous with each other in dates, and also, like the coins I showed you, synonymous with the name of God. Don't forget, Jesus' name on the cross was in Greek, Latin, and Hebrew, being Yehoshua, Jesus, and Jesus. So back to the dating system being weird, the night the stars fell. Was that really in the 1800s, or was that kind of way back there? Alright, now we're back to the Geneva Bible 1570 for hints. Revelations chapter 13, what do the footnotes say? Why is it talking about Emperor Nero? And literally written right in the footnotes, here's a depiction of the Roman Empire when the beast is coming out the ocean? Meaning Rome because it was the fifth government? And with Rome being like a beast, and in the first century we had Nero Caesar, and the money shows him turn from man to God? But more than just a god, Apollo! Apollyon the Lightbringer. Look at the spines on his head. That grew over time. Did you also know that Nero Caesar literally had a statue made of him? Look at the spines on the head. Okay, why is my man depicted as Lucifer right here? And what's it really mean that the shackles are broken off the feet of Lucifer or Apollo? Fun fact, did you know Nero is the one name that equaled both 666 and 616 depending on the language? Both of them. Y'all still with me? We're about to get into the future of where we are now. By the way, this is the UN's decision-making room. Showing right here a beast with a mortal wound by a sword, and also some kind of stork that shedded its skin like a snake. And we also have some kind of marriage going on with this dude right here giving a fruit to this girl. Who is the god of this world? Who's controlling this world? I told you guys from the beginning of this video, it's going to be a hard one, but if you are open to all information that leads to be true, then maybe you will be able to find out what's going on right now. It's the only way, is to understand what was so you can understand what is now. Back to Revelations 13 in the Geneva Bible. Now, the footnotes were written by John Calvin. Remember though, footnotes are not scripture. They're just people from that era, from that time, running what they think. But still, it talks about Satan being loose in the hole, and it says that Satan will be loosed from his 1,000-year prison when Sylvester the second Pope is on the scene. The reign of Christ is until Pope Sylvester the second Pope. Now it gets pretty weird right here. You ask Google, who's the second Pope? Pope Linus? You gotta dig. When I mean dig, I mean Google straight up took his name out, basically. But I did find him from a book that was in the 1500s, or was it I-500? J500. Sylvester Perios and his Golden Roll. Golden Roll, huh? Born in 1456. This is Pope II. Google calls him Italian theologian. But this ancient book that's in the Vatican's library called the Beehive of Roman Catholicism from the 1500s calls him the Pope. Here's the problem though. All dates, all facts, everything is moved around. We know nothing. All I hope for this video is that we can acknowledge that we really know nothing in the grand scheme, and there's so many hidden things in our past that seem to be very significant. So we have this doomsday map that was brought forth by a necromancy, a divine or a witch who talked to a demon. I wonder if there's any merit here. Do you remember when Arby's just made this commercial, The Return is Here? Talking about like aliens and stuff. They're dumb potato cakes. Do you remember a few years ago when Nashaw did this randomly? Look where we are right now. Do you remember when the Pentagon came out and said this about 1 year ago? I hope you've read it by now. And then back to the UN's decision-making room mural. With the beast with a mortal wound by sword. And the shedding of the skin. You get what I'm saying? And then we have the Pope, which that same Geneva Bible talks about the Pope also playing a role in Revelations 13. We have him opening all those portals for Christmas in the Jubilee year. The final hour, or the final hour. All I've done in this video is give you information. Let me know what you think and how you're feeling below. Did you know that the whole world seemingly melted all around us not too far in our past? And that the melting of the entire world supposedly, allegedly, is closer to us than was closer to the building of the Ark? And this will get crazier in a minute, but anywhere you look on any continent on this earth, you will see melted buildings, melted mountains, everything is melted. Why? Why is this not documented anywhere? Well, I did find one documentation I'm about to show you. Probably the most overlooked documentation to ever exist. And coming from the most important document to ever exist. Even just pay attention to Sudan's pyramids all being charred. Charred by something. You remember when Jesus said to be more tolerable in that day for Sodom and Gomorrah than for anywhere else? Anywhere else where they reject his word. But like I said, there is one mention of everything on this earth melting. And we don't give it much thought. But the one mention of this scenario that we have in all literature says, the heavens shall pass away with a great noise, and the elements shall melt with fervent heat. The earth and also the works that are therein shall be burned up. Let me know if you can guess what book that came from, and also on the complete other side of the spectrum. In 5087, when the map was created, there was no ice in the south. You know, the South Pole? Not only were the map makers seemingly sure of this, they were so sure they put animals down there. Where are the penguins at though? I don't see those. It wasn't until more modern history where they put ice down there. I wonder if something big happened. Kind of like it seems like something else really big happened. Questioning your reality? This video right here, it'll help. But the devil himself was seen going to people's houses in Texas, and even crazier, he had an apocalyptic message with him. And yes, it's a guy in a mask, but y'all don't understand just how significant this is, especially right now. And even bigger, the street that he went on to knock on doors has a huge spiritual implication. So let's start off with his message. Revelations 20:1 through 15. Very, very few people will actually understand what this guy is alluding to. And to be honest, you just can't wake people up till they're ready to wake up. But it starts with a great angel coming down, having the key to the bottomless pit or abyss, abyssos in the Greek, and basically grabbing hold of Satan and throwing him in the pit. He then sealed Satan in the pit, and that he would be loosened afterwards. This takes place after the Great Tribulations. And after he is bound, we see the people who went through this Great Tribulation all being rewarded and reigning with Jesus Christ himself on earth for 1,000 years. Blessed and holy is he who takes part in the first resurrection, because to them the second death has no power. There's more than one death. So we had the Great Tribulations, and the great angel binds Satan, throw him in the pit, and then Satan's released for a season to deceive all the nations in the world. And after his little season's up, a great fire comes from the heavens and devours everything on the earth. And after the fire, the great white throne appears. Heaven and earth lose their place, and it's time for the judgment of all, the dead and alive. Don't forget, these are quite literally the verses that this guy had on his sign on the street of Hebron. And at this great white judgment, the people who were not written in the Lamb's Book of Life were thrown into the lake of fire. No longer hell, lake of fire. And also the devil was thrown into the lake of fire with them. The devil, not the Antichrist, the devil. Not the Antichrist, him at this point in prophecy is already in hell. Very odd that this guy would randomly do this having those exact verses on this piece of cardboard. And he did this on the street of Hebron in Texas. Let's look at the spiritual significance. A holy site for every single religious group. The burial place for Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, who had the promise. It was the center for the tribe of Judah. Who is the most important figure to ever live from the tribe of Judah? Put it in the comments if you know. And you can see all this other stuff right here beside me. So, do you think it's an accident that he went out randomly with a devil's mask and knocked on doors with this sign on that exact street? If that's what you think, I don't know what to tell you. Humanity's waking up and they're gonna find out how deeply we've been misled. And I mean how deeply we've been misled. I'm telling you, the world is not ready for all the things that have been hidden from us for hundreds of years. Everything I show you in this short video is 1000% a fact. So don't get mad at the messenger because your history teachers lied to you. Let's start. Fact 1. Did you know that all the islands and all the continents moved out of their place to new places? California used to be an island. The continents did kind of look like Pangea. They were all very close together. And some major cataclysm happening, separating everything from itself. Fact 2. Did you know the stars did indeed fall from heaven? They say it happened in the 1800s, but if you know, then you know our civilization started in 1776. Or right about then, and when this happened, every eye in the world saw it. Fact 3. Did you know that all of our railroad tracks were discovered meters under the mud and dirt and go all the way from South America to the up northernmost tip of everything? Do you get it? Yep, the same place the auroras come from. Yep, the same place with Rupus Nigra in the 4 quadrants of land. The place where Google Maps will kick you off. Oh, and by the way, did you know that probably the second most anticipated character of the entire Bible in the book of Daniel traveled to this North Mountain? Guy wanted to be like God. Yeah, I know, I gotta leave you guys on a cliff. Look, I'm working on literally a 3-hour video with every literal detail that was hidden in our past. All lining up completely with the Bible and every single book of the Bible. And I think I'll finally be done with it the first Monday of February. Yeah, you see it, your eyes aren't deceiving you. Last part of the plug, then we'll get back to fact number 4. Make sure you're following me on Facebook for updates and the full movie will be on YouTube. Yes, everything was melted in our near past. Fact 4. And I surely mean everything. You'll find melted buildings, melted rocks, melted canyons all over the earth. Why isn't that in the history books? This one's actually pretty scary. Fact 5. Did you know that the Mount of Olives was in fact splitted exactly half a mile to Azel? Even more so, they built in the crack of the Mount Olives after 1800. They just filled it up. Because this, my friends, was Jerusalem in the 1800s. It looks like something massive had taken place right here. By the way, did you know that Nero Caesar demanded worship as God, and if you didn't do it, he would unalive you? And quite literally, all of Jerusalem was desecrated and destroyed in 70 AD. What are we at, fact 6 now? Did you know that the whole entire earth after the melting caught fire and destroyed all the buildings everywhere? Just look around me. Stick with me, they're only facts. Where are we at, fact 7? Did you know that the sun went dark for literally 18 months? Again, the date, 536 AD. But in the history of wars, they wrote that men were free neither from death nor pestilence nor any kind of anything bad for this whole time it went dark. Like the whole time the sun went dark, there was massive tribulation on all the people. Scientists now try to say it was volcanoes, but this does not match historical records, as the sun was dark everywhere in the earth at that time. And if you're curious to why I never trust their dates, we have caught these people in the act adding 1,000 or 500 years to buildings. Straight up slopping on another 1,000 years. Look, I have been studying eschatology, history, and archaeology for over 13 years, and I've come to find that Google changes its mind all the time. But one thing that is forever are statues and buildings, even if they change them. Yes, the shackle is broken off the statue of Lucifer's foot. If you made it this far, well done. This kind of information is very hard for people to stomach. And look, it was for me too, but we're not even close to done yet. I still have 200 more facts to give you along with every book of the Bible, so stay tuned.